facts on the ground. The fact on the ground probably, almost, as I said, almost certainly would not mean that if you recognize the right of return, which I think must be recognized, you would actually have whatever 5 million, 10 million Palestinians suddenly asking for their homes back, which of course aren't there. Right? And in that sense, history really does move forward, and you have to go forward in some way and not backwards. I think an apology would be really important, and forms of monetary compensation would be really important. And, you know, the return of refugees, some refugees would also, you know, be important. It seems to me that there's room for some kind of negotiation on plank number 3. On the first 2, I'm not sure there's any room for negotiation at all. That is, the idea of second-class citizens, of Palestinian citizens of Israel, not having the same rights as Jewish citizens of Israel is grotesque, right? So the people who just say, no more occupation, no more settlements, and we'll think about the Palestinian citizens of Israel afterwards, that seems to be completely unacceptable. I don't know. People may disagree and think that plank 3 is as absolute a principle as planks 1 and 2. But you asked, so I'm giving you my own opinion.
See if I can keep my mind about me here. I was in 9th grade when the Nakba took place in 1948. My best experience in that was right here on campus about 15 years ago when Benny Bruner came and showed his film called The Great Book Robbery. Very powerful story of how the books were taken from the Palestinian homes, and they're all there in the Jewish library. Nobody can find, they can look at them, but nobody does go to that library. Second subject, I went to a baseball game at Ithaca College, and I had that experience of not standing up for the national anthem. It's a powerful experience. And the third one is the word that you used. Anyway, it leads to my hope that people have seen Amy Goodman and Democracy Now, because if you do, you know that the 13th Amendment was very surreptitiously modified by the fact that there's a little phrase in there that says, sure, we're going to end slavery, but we have a little caveat that if you're convicted of a crime, then that doesn't apply to you. You can go to our private prisons and have mass incarceration and the new Jim Crow. Anyway, that's about as far as I want to go. Oh, the last one was in the film. I was glad to hear one person say that never again does apply to everyone, not just the Jews.
What I might say very briefly, speaking to your experience of remaining seated during the national anthem, which I think is a very powerful gesture. And I think it's liberatory, right? I mean, it opens up a world of possibilities, right? Because we begin to expand our critical consciousness and we begin to engage social reality, right? Which is a terribly frightening thing for the power structure. We start to become aware of our realities and the ways in which we are conditioned. And when we begin to emancipate ourselves, right, we begin to salvage ourselves. I mean, how does one live with dignity in such a profoundly anti-human society, right? How does one live with dignity in the belly of the empire, right? That is a really sobering challenge. These first steps toward resistance are so difficult, but they're also exhilarating, right? Which is something that I try to convey. I mean, in the classroom, I teach social movements, among other things. Cornell students are well socialized. They're very risk averse, right? Their Facebook, this is something for caricature, but I like to caricature Cornell students. Their Facebook pages are all very cultivated to make sure that they'll be appealing to their future employers, multinational corporations, banks. And so when we talk about social movements and we discuss the sacrifices that are involved in bringing about social change, it's very sobering for them. That's why I think it's important to talk about the exhilaration of struggle, right? Because when you take that first breath of air, right? When you step out on faith, right? When you begin to resist, and after a while you don't even care who tries to shame you or who spits on you, right? Because you're just so free, right? And then you can't go back. You can't go back, right? And every successful social movement has always involved just a tiny minority of people who couldn't turn back, who couldn't continue to breathe the poisonous air, right? And say that it was oxygen. It's not oxygen, right? So I that's just speaking one tiny part of your I think your very complex and important question, but that's I found inspiration in that.
I'd actually like to add something again on the same point. So about what you did at the baseball game, which is a little bit, it's certainly relevant to the Colin Kaepernick story. You don't know how many other lives you changed by doing that. All right, so just think about that. The butterfly in the hurricane or whatever it is, you really don't know. You probably had a lot more influence, you being both exhilarated but also just brave, right? Because it took a lot of bravery to do it. You don't know how many people were moved to do how many other things because you did that.
And just briefly, how are you getting the film out? I'm just wondering how you are getting the film out. And thank you for taking that brave step of doing it. So it's tremendous. I mean, all of the people that have stepped into the film and given their story.
Frankly, if you're a tenured professor, it just, bravery is really not. If you're a student cultivating your Facebook page because you don't know who's going to want to employ you afterwards, it's a different deal, right? So the quick answer to how I'm getting the film out is I'm not, really. I mean, I did not have a good plan for this. You got ideas, but...
I trolled YouTube. I trolled YouTube and I found snippets, the 6-minute versions of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and maybe there were more.
I mean, it's available for free, but I just don't see the hungry hordes trying to...
So I was going to say, because I love using the social media and to get this out on Facebook, and people could take that on through the student SJP and others.
It's called bestfriendsfilm.com. You don't have to pay. Those who want to pay, you can buy it on Amazon, but why? Really?
Just a footnote. I'm not so sure that it's easy for tenured professors, because I know a lot of tenured professors who are very, very risk averse. So add this comment about not standing out, is that if you're the first person, it's extremely difficult. The second person, it's a hell of a lot easier. By the time there's 3 revolutions possible. So that's the one other thing to remember. Donna and Neville came here to do a talk on Islamophobia a year and a half ago. And I remember thinking that quite apart from everything we learned from the talk, there were many activists, particularly students here, who didn't know that they could connect with folks working on similar things in the city, New York for one, but there are other places where things are going on. And that's one thing that immediately made a lot of bravery possible. That simply would have been very, very difficult if everybody thought they were isolated in our little communities. So that's just a comment, not a question, but and then I'll.
So just thank you all for this discussion and for being real about what's involved in doing this kind of work. So I'm struck by this whole notion of people being risk averse, and also about this comment you made, Russell, about white supremacy cannot be challenged unless one is out on the streets, and another comment about polite panels, right? Which many of us in the academy are used to and are disciplined by. I was going to say that you all were quite disciplined by that microphone. I don't know if you figured that out, but it told you where to stand and how to speak. That's a different thing. But I guess with the question I have, and it's for all of you actually. So within educational settings, there are pedagogies of conformity that I think lead to people being risk averse. And my question is about how do you actually start revolutions through pedagogies, and what would pedagogies of revolution or dissent consist of? What are the characteristics of something like that? Because I know all of you, including you, Adia, are in whatever space you're in. If you're in an organization, you have to teach about what's going on, and you want to teach. You want to change people's minds. So I guess I'm curious about how do we actually nurture pedagogies of revolution and dissent to work against those kinds of conformities that seem to be so much part of our culture right now.
There's a kind of formalistic answer. I'm not sure you're going to like it.
Okay.
Which is actually to try to encourage people to argue with us too. I mean, to see that there are, certainly at elite institutions like this one, that there are real benefits, profits to be taken from the willingness to be intellectually venturesome. Not just to regurgitate, to memorize, to give the answer that you know is expected, because in a place like Cornell, people are very smart, they figure out what kind of answer is expected. And frequently, we really do expect it.
Yeah.
I mean, Lord knows I do. I'm pious down to my shoelaces, right? So I want a politically pious answer, right? Well, if I'm a little more open to genuine contestation, then what I'm actually teaching formally is the benefits of, or the willingness to take risks, right? Which I'm not necessarily acting out in my pedagogy otherwise. So, I don't know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
That's a big question. I don't know why you think I have experience with that, but no, thank you. Yeah.
At a moment you were inspired by.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, it's really hard to even conceive of norms outside of the way that they are already established, right? Especially in a university setting, I think, and especially at Cornell, where we're not only are we isolated because we're in upstate New York and Ithaca, but also we're isolated because we're on top of a hill, right? So it's really, I don't know, enclosed spaces. But then I was exposed to like everyday racisms and like just people saying really awful colonialist things in like very casual settings, you know, thinking that that's totally acceptable. And I think that's the moment where I was like, oh my God, like I also can't exist like this. So I wonder if like to a certain extent you have to, like people have to kind of feel that push or like have that moment where it's like, oh wait, like if this is the norm, like I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this anymore. So I don't know if that like answers your question, but that was kind of the moment, I guess, for me. Yeah.
But I would just say, this is a question I think about a lot. So I think that part of it lies in understanding our own contradictions and confronting our own contradictions. And part of confronting our contradictions, I think, means coming to terms with the fallacies of liberalism and with liberal institutions. And I think central to those fallacies is the idea that is the ideal of moral suasion, right? And there's also the ideal of expertise. So I amass a body of expertise. I'm then qualified. I'm credentialed. I'm able to speak on a particular topic. And through the alchemy of dialogue, I then win people to my morally superior perspective, and then things change, society changes. Well, that's simply not how society changes, right? I mean, as social historians will remind us. So, with respect to the question of imperialism, imperialism has never reformed itself. Imperialism has never dismantled itself, in total or in part, right? Imperialism must be